redirect that, and there's a lot of waste in the Pentagon, but redirect that, particularly that technological know-how and our engineers. Because we are going to be short of them. We're going to have to train a lot of people who are going to do this Green New Deal. Get them doing constructive stuff instead of designing more weapons of mass destruction. Or, you know, bridges so you can occupy, who knows next, Iran, Venezuela, there's all kind of crazy stuff going on. And that's a huge part. That's another thing that's not in the Democrats' version of Green New Deal. So they don't ban fracking and new fuel infrastructure, they extend the deadline, they don't take on the military-industrial complex, which is where a lot of resources are needed. So there are a lot of things, they're on my palm card. Organizing, if you put the palm card over, there are a few things that we really want to emphasize. First thing is ballot access. People say, why run for president? Why don't you just start from the bottom up? Well, in a lot of states, it's hard as hell to run without a ballot box. You got the petitioning requirements. In this country, petitioning requirements to get on the ballot are more onerous than any other electoral democracy in the world. I've been looking at India, Russia, Mexico, Germany, Canada, the UK. I can tell you how many signatures they need. It's a tiny fraction of what we need. India, it's one signature. You know, Canada is 50 to 100. The UK, you want to run for a member of parliament, it's 25. In my state, New York, it's 3,500. In Illinois, some of those districts is 15,000. You have limited time to collect. That's to keep any competition from the two-party duopoly. So those are the kind of issues. So getting ballot access, that's one thing we're going to do in this campaign. We're going to qualify for federal matching funds so that up to your first $250 in contributions will be doubled. And you know what? I may be the only candidate doing that because the Democrats and Republicans are getting so much corporate money, they don't need the public money, and they just go around it. Unless they're really marginal. Maybe Mike Lavelle is going to get some matching funds if he qualifies. You know, people like that. But that's going to be an important part of our campaign because we're going to rely on small donors. And then we want to hire organizers to help locals, you know, organize beyond usual suspects, how to maintain an organization, how to initiate action. So Greens are really good actors. We're known for showing up. When the movement calls something, count on the Green Party people being there in those places. But we're not organizers. We don't initiate. We don't build. We just sort of wait for the message to come on the line. You know, we're going to all do this. We're all going to do that. You don't even know who decided that. You know, it might be move on, paid for by some liberal billionaires. You trace it back, and their staff is sitting there deciding what to do. And they'll talk to the Democrats. What are you willing to support, or is this going too far? I mean, I go into chapter and verse in New York. I just did a counterpunch article on climate legislation. If you want to read it, it was in the counterpunch, I guess a week ago, about 10 days ago, Friday. That's the kind of political situation. So we want to help people organize, help support their local candidates, and also build the base of the party, particularly in those parts of the country that aren't voting. You know, we're not stealing votes from anybody. Everybody's got to earn their votes. But more than anything, we want to emphasize the people that don't vote because it just doesn't fit the party system. That's predominantly in the working class, the youth, and people of color. And we want to build the party base out there because that's the future. If there's going to be an independent left that is a major party, that's going to be our base. And those folks are mostly saying, I'm out of here. They don't care about me. I'm not going to care about them. They don't even vote. But those are people that I think we can organize. So I'm going to stop there and let's deal with question and answer. So, thanks for having me.
Hi. Any questions?
First of all, would you encourage people in swing states to do vote swapping instead of voting for you directly? And second of all, what makes your Green New Deal approach to just transition different from the AOC version of the Green New Deal?
Okay, vote swapping is like, you know, riding the votes. That came up with Nader. Molly Ivins actually put it in the column, and the Nader campaign that agreed to it, you know, on ethical grounds, as well as if we don't really believe in what we're doing and saying you should vote for us. We're not asking you to vote for us unless we get somebody to, you know, in a battleground state vote for the left or evil. You know, what are we doing out here? I mean, I really believe the Democrats are no solution. I want to get rid of Trump, but you get Biden or almost any of those people, even Bernie. I've known Bernie since 1972. He used to be a socialist. If you're not about social ownership and democratic standing of major means of production, you will not have control of the economy, and the capitalists will be able to undermine your Medicare for all or your job guarantee or whatever your programs are. Because they'll do to Sanders nationally what they did to Mitterrand in France, or Allende in Chile, or Dennis Kucinich, the boy in the Air Police. He ran and promised not to privatize their municipally owned power utilities. And he kept his promise. He was only like 27 years old, and Dennis still looks like a boy. Back then he looked like a junior high school kid. So the banks thought they could take him on. He stuck to his guns. So what did the banks do? They said, we're not going to roll over your line of credit. Now every business or government needs a line of credit because your revenues come in bunches, particularly if you collect the property taxes, when they're paid quarterly. So by not withdrawing the line of credit, they forced the city into bankruptcy, and Kucinich was out. Voinovich came in, he was going to privatize, but then we had that super high inflation, and it became financially untenable at the end of the 70s. And then they realized about 20 years later that Dennis had saved the city like hundreds of millions of dollars. So he got rehabilitated, he got on the council, and he got in Congress. But that's the kind of power that Bernie said in his speech on socialism in 2015. He said, I'm not about, he said government ownership, but he meant I'm not about taking over ownership. We're just going to tax capitalism and provide benefits. And capitalists will fight that. You just want to have the power to carry it through. So there's, the whole spectrum over there isn't doing what needs to be done, and we can't wait for real solutions because the climate crisis is nuclear arms race and the devastation of working people in this country. Think about it. 20-year life expectancy difference between the working class and the upper middle class. That is, it's inexcusable, it's immoral, and we have to do something about it. So that was one question. What was the other one about vote swapping and
just transition?
Oh, just transition. Okay. I knew Tony Mazzocchi, oil chemical and atomic workers. I worked with his folks, Richard Miller, others. When that was being developed, they used to call it the GI Bill for workers, and modeled after World War II, and the Workers' Super Fund, which is my favorite. Corporations have a super fund if they can't pay for the cleanup of their mess. Government comes in and helps them do it. What about the workers? So, and Tony and them, they were talking about oil, chemical, and atomic, the dirtiest industries that their guys are getting sick in. And Tony also remembered, the conversion after World War II. He was a World War II veteran. And I think, or maybe Korea, I'll get mixed up. But anyway, he saw how, you need to plan for that transition. So they used to talk about maintaining wages and benefits until people find comparable work. And I've been in debates with union staffers about this, and they'll say, well, yeah, we heard that before, like with NAFTA trade adjustment benefits. And my region got the most benefits of any in the country. Upstate New York, the Rust Belt, that's the most extreme case. And you got a little money, but it wasn't a transition, and people didn't end up where they were before in terms of their standard of living. So what I'm saying is 5 years guaranteed wages and benefits so you make the transition. Now the reality is, and we've got a budget going up. I've been working with a guy who's been doing research on this Green New Deal we're talking about. His name's John Wren. He was a student of Seymour Melman. For those of you who are familiar with the old Peaceburg and stuff, I see this Quaker woman nod. That's been a big issue that's under-discussed the last few decades. He's done it for converting to a green economy across all productive sectors. And we've been working on a budget, and we've estimated 23 million jobs created. These are permanent jobs over a 20-year transition, including 6 million in manufacturing. It's about $2 trillion in public investment to stimulate this whole transition. So we think that most of the guys, in particularly construction and utility work, they'll be put to work right away. It's maybe people that can't do manufacturing and construction, want to do services. We need a job guarantee program. So you have community-defined needs met, like youth programs, elder programs, child care or pre-K, mental health, a lot of services. Community decides what are the physical public infrastructure and social service projects we need. And then instead of going to the unemployment office, you go to the employment office and say, I want my job. They got jobs on the shelf, federal funding, 10% local funding, so it's not, boondoggles. And that's the way the Works Progress Administration worked in the 30s, and very successful. And we still use a lot of that infrastructure they built. and still, benefit from the murals and the cultural projects. I mean, the slave narratives would have been lost if it wasn't for the cultural project of the Work Progress Administration. So those are the kind of things we want to do. But I know that these guys in the unions, they want to hear something concrete, not something general. So the AOC marquee resolution is general on just transition without being specific on what the benefits are. And I don't know if we got it on the website yet, but I'm thinking 5 years. That's what I've been hearing from, the union staffers. It's kind of a challenge because I was talking with somebody here about building trades, right? The officers are all for like the pipeline, and they sell it to the members. Even though jobs for investment in, ground source heat pumps, so we don't have to heat our homes with natural gas. A lot more jobs. Solar, wind, efficiency, retrofits on buildings, a lot more jobs in power investment than gas, oil, coal, or nuclear. And they get that. They know we're right, but it's like a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. And that's another reason we got to get Greens elected to local office and on the basis of state legislature and Congress. So they see us doing stuff and being principled and holding the line instead of, look what happened to the Green New Deal in Congress. It was first a select committee for a Green New Deal with the right to subpoena, the right to put legislation directly to the floor. And Pelosi said, whoa, 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 you can't put legislation right on the floor. It's going to have to go through other committees. And then she said, and subpoenas, no. And then she said, oh, okay, I'm going to set up my own climate committee. We're not going to do a Green New Deal. So then they switched to the non-binding resolution, try to get members on record. Pelosi won't bring it to the floor for a vote. Of course, McConnell said, oh, we'll vote, because he wanted the Democrats running for president to be on the record, because the Republicans think they can beat us up on the Green New Deal. And so they all voted present, except for it, and voted against it. So, AOC in the left margin of the Democratic Party brings up a good idea they got from the Green Party, great. But then what happens? They get shot down by the Democratic leadership. So that's why, another reason why the Greens got to be in this election. And I don't mean just me. I hope, in Blacksburg, you get somebody, I don't know who your congressperson is. I've been hearing about your damn
Morgan Griffin.
Okay, I don't know him, but I heard about your governor. And you got two white governors with a black face, and you got a lieutenant governor, you got some other scandals. We need to start getting some Greens in there who...
Yeah, a lot of Republicans.
Republicans.
I call them Republicans.
Okay. So anyway, long answer. I tend to give long answers.
Yeah. So what would you do about carbon emissions? Obviously they need to be reduced or limited or outlawed or whatever, but how would you go about that?
We get off fossil fuels in every sector.
Okay, thank you.
Well, what sector you want to look at? Home heating, that's ground source heat pumps instead of natural gas. Vehicles, electric vehicles instead of gasoline. And we're talking about electric that is clean from solar, wind, tidal, geothermal that is, reaching down, getting heat to boil water and turn turbines. Transportation. We got to de-emphasize vehicles on roads and re-emphasize rails. And I'm talking about mass transit in the cities, high-speed intercity rail, which reduces air traffic, and freight rail. And, I would work in logistics, UPS, unloaded, We don't need trucks running down the highways. You can get from hub to hub rail, and then your electric, smaller trucks can get it to the warehouses or the hubs to be sorted, and then put in other trucks to be delivered.
My question is, how do you achieve that? Do you outlaw carbon? Do you tax carbon? Do you subsidize?
Okay.
How do you do that? What's the policy mechanism you use to achieve
I think all the above. A carbon tax that graduated at a big enough scale that it forces consumers and particularly companies to make decisions. We want a carbon tax, not cap and trade. We can predict the price. Businesses can plan when to do their retrofit, when it will pay off. We need to provide government financing for a lot of the retrofitting, like heat pumps. Once they're operating, they're cheaper than any other source of heating your house. But there's upfront capital costs. So that needs to be financed in a way that as you make your monthly payments, you're paying off the financing and paying for the electricity to run the pump. So government's got to play a role. We need to build the Green New Deal factories that can produce the new technology that is sustainable. So that's another thing. Clean, what do they call it? Clean energy standards for utilities. So there's a time where you're basically saying you got to have a percentage renewable. So if the goal is 2030, you know, in each state or nationwide, you find out what's the percentage now, and here's the goals you got to meet. You got to have planning with reporting back and sanctions if they don't meet the goals, assistance to help them meet the goals. And those are the kinds of things we got to do. And I'm basically all of the above in terms of both market and government mandates to get us to that goal. You know, some people say, oh, it's got to be all mandates because you can't rely on the market. Well, no, a carbon tax is going to help the private sector make decisions. Because I don't care how much the socialists are, we are not prepared as socialists to take over every business in the economy and plan the whole damn economy. You know, it needs to be the key sectors. We're still going to have markets for commercial, markets for goods and services for the most part, and probably intermediate goods in manufacturing. And then even big manufacturing. Is it better to be a worker co-op or a publicly owned enterprise that operates at cost of public benefit? I think you got to look at each industry and see. I think we need a national railroad corporation. We need a national interstate renewable energy system with public power utilities locally that are democratic from the bottom up. In other words, the local boards are elected by the people, and they federate the state and national level. So anyway, I think there's a lot to discuss there, and you got to look at, and I would also say agriculture. I didn't say much about this, but agriculture is killing us not only with respect to climate, but in terms of pesticides, habitat destruction of insects, which means ecosystem collapse. And we've had scientists recently reporting that we're losing 2 to 3% of insects per year. By 2050, we may have to be in a situation where the pollinators and one of the lower foundations of the food pyramid will go away, and the ecosystems collapse, food production becomes harder, and we're in an existential crisis. Food becomes short. So we got to convert agriculture to organic regenerative methods, partly to save habitat, and partly to bring carbon back out of the atmosphere into the biosphere where it's sequestered. So that means rebuilding living soils instead of ground that just holds up, you know, chemicalized fertilizers with pesticides applied. So you're building up root structures and the bacteria and all that soil ecosystem. And we're actually depleting soils. They're washing down rivers because of the kind of farming we do, and depleting aquifers with this industrial agriculture. So that's a whole nother area that doesn't get discussed, but is very important to dealing with climate change and ecosystem protection more generally. And climate has been getting the headline for good reason, but we've forgotten some of the threats we face in terms of water shortages, in terms of habitat loss. You saw the biodiversity report came out from the UN. We're in the 6th great mass extinction. And that, you know, it's not just there are going to be no tigers out here, you know, in the jungle in India, or elephants in Africa. I mean, we're talking about ecosystem collapse, and we're part of the ecosystem. So, you know, there was a climate scientist, Kevin Anderson, when James Hansen, our most famous climate scientist, was saying we got to get to 350 parts per million. He said that in 2008. Anderson was saying the same thing in England at the Tyndall Center for Climate Research. And then he said the next year, you know, the way he looks at it is there are about 9 billion people going to be here by 2050, but if we don't deal with the climate thing, maybe only 500 million will survive. That's 90% mortality. And that's the kind of situation these people that study this are looking at. And, you know, the two-party system is not taking it seriously. I mean, to the extent they're talking about it sort of for political brownie points, not a serious program. You got a damn president that says it's a Chinese hoax. I just did an interview with the NPR station in Florida and read one of Trump's, or they reported, they wanted me to respond to him, and he said a whole bunch of dumb stuff like going to ban airline travel, and it's going to cost $100 trillion. He's talking about training people. So my response is, you lied, Mr. President, and just, you know, started pointing out what he was saying. That's what we're up against. So we need uncompromising opposition to what we got. Yeah.
The person who asked me the question might not be entirely everybody that's I have been involved in Green Party for a couple of years at Tech, at the state level and at the national level. Other people who have come on board with President Melvin here, and we tried our best to organize a campus. And we've gotten some successes there. We're particularly working on getting the university to buy best possible. And I wanted to know what it is that you said we're training and looking at. I wanted to know what kinds of things your campaign is looking at. You're going to be in various places. What you're going to do to help build small groups like ours out that are doing parties together.
Well, we want to hire organizers that can come in and have, sit down with you and say, all right, what have you been doing, what's worked, what's not, have you tried this, have you tried that. We need people with experience in union organizing and community organizing. There are a whole range of techniques in organizing to reach beyond the usual suspects. To reach people that, don't know you, don't trust you, but how you build a relationship. Classic statement, you might have read it in the Washington Post, a column about an organizer, I think it was Wilmington, North Carolina, and she's a black woman, it involves civil rights, and she's working at this factory with this guy who's a former Klansman, and they suddenly got a common problem as workers in this factory, and so she approaches him, and he's kind of a leader in his sector, and he's still in the Klan at this point, and she says, how can I help you? And, he says, well, we're trying to do this. She helps him and builds a relationship that way. And then her philosophy of organizing was, you help the people you want to work with get what they want. And just about when they get it, then you say, you know what? And then you ask them to help you with yours. But by that point, they know who you are, they trust you. So that's just one example of things organizers can, impart. So that's basically the way we're looking at it at this point. A big question will be, can we raise company to, hire people to do it? We're going to have limited resources. We want to be sure that when people ask for support, we got for them to do. But we also want to help, like I said earlier, the Greens are great activists. We show up, but we don't know everything we should about organizing. So that's the way it is. Ideally we have a field organizer in every state. So, they can come to Blacksburg and then go to your other locals and help you coordinate what you need to statewide. I know you need a ballot drive here in Virginia to get on the ballot. That's pretty straightforward. I mean, we can help with that. That's our first priority. We're not on the ballot. We're not in the discussion. We can't even demand to be in the discussion. So that's what we're looking at.
All right, one more. You guys can wrestle for it.
I think he's ready.
Go ahead, Sean.
I had not so much a policy question, I was just kind of wondering about campaigning, because we all know that the media is not going to pay any attention to third parties to make fun of them. So one of the things that I thought Jill Stein did really well was constantly inserting herself into social media, tweeting, Facebook, and things like that. And I just wanted to see if you were prepared to have that same kind of
Yeah, we're not giving up on corporate media, mainstream media, but social media, we're definitely going to cover that base, use it as best we can. And then use progressive, social media, outlets, from Common Green to counterculture. And then, but one thing Julia knew much of was op-eds and press releases to the mainstream media. We're going to try to cultivate relationships with reporters that are interested in what we're saying, that are interested in the Green New Deal. I first came out that I was running for president in the New Republic by a young woman who had covered me in another, I think she actually was a student at Circuit University, written about some of the stuff I was doing. And somehow she got wind that there was this draft Howie thing. And so she kind of started about, I think the article was, is Democrats stealing the Green Party's, signature issue. And then that's where it came out that, people want to run for president. So there's kind of thing that's not, mainstream media is more the chattering class, a political journal. The Nation, man, it's a tough one to break because they are so damn democratic. And, but, there's some people in their advisor or commentary that we can build a relationship with. John Nichols. He knows me. He likes what I'm doing. He covers me once in a while. So we're getting the nation. And, I don't think, though, if we get on all 50 states and the District of Columbia, they got to cover us because we're in the margin of difference in some states. And so that's the story. And then I want to provoke some of these people. I want to write a column about how Joe Biden got my pension cut. He ain't so much for the working class. Or Governor Frackenlooper from Colorado. He's running on the climate change, but he's known as Governor Frackenlooper in Colorado. And I want to start poking these people. Ideally, Trump would start tweeting about me, and then I'd be a superstar. So we got to get under his skin. But we're going to try a lot of things. But we're not going to say, "Oh, what was us? They won't cover it." We're going to give them every opportunity to. And in my experience in New York, the reporters that if you keep giving them good stuff, they're going to want to cover you, and they're going to argue with their editors or their news director and say, "Look, this is worth covering, and let's cover it." So we're going to strong media strategy because that's like a megaphone. I mean, I can do this all day long, every day, and it'd be a fraction of what two big media did in media in terms of reaching people. But then you got to think, you need to do this too. You need to reach them more than once. The experts in campaigns say a voter won't even remember your damn name until they encountered it 6 or 7 times. They saw you on the news and they saw a yard sign and somebody gave them a palm card and somebody knocked on the door and they got a phone call. And after that, people start saying, "Oh, this guy's running for office. I know who that is." So, yeah, we got to hit them from all sides.
Thank you for all your remarks, for putting us on the map right here. Did you want to make a pitch on this?
Yeah. So
Andrea is our campaign manager.
I'm from Denver, so I'm a little weird. You're gonna have to bear with me.
We've been emigrated.
So here at the bottom of this palm card is where you can find all the social media portals, and of course the website is here as well. We would love for you to join this mailing list today, and you can do it traditionally, paper, and so I'll just pass one down each side of the table. Or, if you're cool, pull out your phone right now and text the word Howie to 444-999, and it's at the bottom of the palm card. We would love for you to go ahead and join. Howie said that we have to raise money. One of the first things that we have to do is put organizers on the ground to assist with your ballot access efforts, but also to help you be an effective state party and a local party, right? So we need matching funds. And so what that means is that we need $5,000 from Virginia and 19 other states in order for us to qualify for matching funds. So whip out your phone, please get on your email, on the email list. We're going to ask for you to help out with that. Virginia right now I think is at about just under 10% to goal to that 5,000. So we're off to a good start. But please take a moment to get on the mailing list. Take a few of those palm cards there, share them with folks. One thing that we have to do as Greens is to always be the media, right? We always have to take the initiative to talk to people around us. The other thing I wanted to point out is that Howie has brought a few copies of his book right there, Independent Politics, that he edited, which for me as a younger leader in the Green Party has been absolutely instructive. And he is selling those today, but if you're nice, he'll sign it for you. So yeah.
You don't even have to be nice.
So yeah, please go ahead and sign up, pull out your phone, do that sort of thing. Take some of the palm cards with you, and just talk about it. Talk about the fact that we've got an eco-socialist Green New Deal, and it's a very comprehensive plan, and we're not going to give up the fight. So.
Just say about the book, it was about the year 2004. We debated safe states versus independent politics. And it seems more relevant now given Trump in office. And these things, kind of stagnated in sales now that sales are picking up and people want to, it's got both sides of the argument in the book. So, it gives you the ammo you need to deal with that argument in 2020.
Safe states versus
Independent politics.
Phyllis?
You know, the safe states idea was we only compete in the states that are safe for one side or the other. That's the battleground states we stay out of. Versus we're running in all the states.
Well, thanks, Mr. Hawkins, for coming to our boot camp. Wish you great success on the trail.
All right, thank you.
You know Arctic Island?
If anybody